Hello, I'm Bill O'Donnell, and welcome to another program on spirituality. Today in the studio, I'm thrilled to have my old friend, Father Joe Voie of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, and one of the retired priests here, who, for my money over the years, has given some of the best weekday homilies that I hear. And so it's a pleasure to have you to come in on short notice, Father Joe. Welcome.
Thank you, Bill.
That's great. For those outside who don't recognize you, Father Joe is a priest in the Archdiocese of Santa Fe. And tell us your background and where you're from and how you got to be a priest.
Well, I'm a Tibetan child born in 1935 in New Hampshire.
Aha. Whereabouts?
Actually, in the city of Nashua, which is called the Gate City.
My grandmother was born there.
Oh, really?
And then she moved to California when she was 3.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
And my father was a French Jansenistic Catholic.
You'll have to explain what a Jansenist is here in a minute.
That's a Catholic Puritan.
Oh.
And my mother
Go ahead.
was from an old Yankee Puritan family, and she was an Episcopalian. And they both got married to the chagrin of both families. The Catholics shunned her because she was not Catholic. The Protestants shunned him because he was Catholic, and so they get along well.
I understand. My mother was a convert, so they were Catholic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My mother never became a convert, but it was 1935. Grew up in southern New Hampshire. My father was working in a mill for a while. Then he tried to do farming, both truck farming and pig farming. There were lots of ups and downs in that, but I went to Catholic school for 9 years, Sisters of Mercy, and there were some really wonderful experiences there and some downers also. But
Did you have siblings?
I had 2 brothers and a sister. I'm the oldest. My brother is 3 years younger. My sister is 3 years younger than him, and then my other brother was 4 years younger than my sister. The 2 youngest ones, the 2 healthy ones, are dead. They died the same year. One was 51, my brother, and my sister was 56. They both died of forms of cancer. So, that's a family malady for my mother's side. The heart disease and the circulation comes from the other side of the family. We grew up on a farm, and 8 miles outside of the city of Nashua. And so, once, as I said, I went 9 years, and then I had a shock, because high school was a public school. My father would not let me go to the school to the Sacred Heart Brothers, because he went to that school, and he ran away from home in the 11th grade. I think school was part of it, but it wasn't the whole story. But he just was flat adamant about the fact that I wasn't going to go to that school. Although he appreciated a lot of the education he got from there. And so public school in the town of Hudson, New Hampshire, which is right outside of Nashville, is a really unique school, an endowed public school. It was endowed to be an agricultural high school, but it became a sort of like a TVI or an industrial school, and then it became the community's public school.
You said you were raised on a farm. What kind of crops did you grow?
Well, truck farming. The whole community was at that time filled with relatively small-scale truck farmers. Tomatoes, beans, corn, that sort of stuff that would go to market in Boston, because Boston was only 40 miles away, so you get up early in the morning. My father didn't do the shipping, but others did, and he would send some of the produce to Boston. The other thing is that my mother spent summers on end canning produce for the winter.
Which was a common practice in those days, right?
It was a common practice, but it was also one of the ways that we survived, because without that, we wouldn't have had enough food. We wouldn't have had the vegetables and those sort of things.
Did you also raise animals for consumption?
For a while, there were some dairy cattle. He didn't like cows, but then he raised hogs. The first attempt was a failure because his friend, the veterinarian, told him, "You have to have them vaccinated." Well, my father was in the 19th century. You don't do that sort of stuff. They all died of cholera. The first group that he got, and finally he made an agreement with Dr. Clark, the veterinarian, to vaccinate the hogs. And he would send a couple times a year, he'd send 100 to 200 hogs to the market.
Yeah. So what was your life like in high school?
Well, it was a real revelation. I mean, first of all, I didn't know any of the students because I had gone to Catholic school, and it was completely different. And the high school, all those students had been together from first grade all the way on up.
Yeah. So you're the new kid.
So
I'm the Catholic kid.
Yeah, as the new kid and the Catholic kid. And the town at that time was pretty much anti-Catholic. You know, I mean, if you were white Protestant Anglo-Saxon, like my grandmother was, you didn't fit. So that was a difficulty, but it didn't bother me a great deal. You know, I mean, I learned how to deal with it and not get upset by it. And it was, I think it was pretty good for me. I mean, it's a relatively small school. There were 43 of us in the graduating class. So there was none of these horrendous numbers that we have now, but, you know.
What year did you graduate from high school?
1953.
And then what did you do after high school?
Ran away from home.
Oh, you did, literally?
Yeah, literally. I joined the Army.
Did.
And that's, I talk too much, but I mean, when I joined the Army, I worked with a recruiter, and I was supposed to be assigned to a mechanics school in New Jersey, Fort Dix, New Jersey. But in basic training, somebody came through and they were giving us a test. Part of it was just a color code test, you know, to find out whether you were colorblind or not. And they said, we got a tremendous school in atomic weapons. And we asked them where it was, and they wouldn't tell us. But I was figuring, you know, my mechanical ability, you can put in a thimble. You know, I figured, well, you know, since the school was only 4 or 8 weeks long instead of 48 weeks, I said, yeah, let's go for it. Got the orders for the school. It was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We had no idea where Albuquerque was.
So you came to New Mexico in the Army?
I came to New Mexico in the Army and was stationed at Sandia Base, which doesn't exist anymore because that's all been subsumed into Kirtland Air Force Base. Yeah. And I learned how to arm the atomic bomb.
Oh, jeez. That's amazing. And so how long were you in the service?
4 years.
And then what did you do when you got out?
Well, I had already decided when I was in the service that I wanted to go to the seminary.
You did. Now that's the important point here. How did that call to the priesthood occur?
Well, I think my mother planted it years ago, and I don't remember the first time she said.
Your mother, the Episcopalian?
Yes, right.
Okay.
When I was 7, I was taking piano lessons, and she was sitting on the piano bench next to me in the dining room, and she said, I don't know what brought it up. And she said, I want one of my children to enter into the ministry. She didn't say priesthood or you know, or delineate any more than that. But I was thinking about it. That's not the first time she said that. But she kept, she said that once in a while, but it wasn't something that she was pressuring.
Just put it out there.
Yeah, she just put it out there. It just came out right in the middle of piano practice. You know, and that was kind of neat. Of course, I went to Catholic school, and the nuns believed that every woman should be a sister and every guy should be a priest. And even at 3rd grade, I was thinking about that, and I said, hey, that doesn't allow for very many kids. So there was, the Catholic school kept
Yeah.
talking about it, and I thought about it for a while, but then when I went to public school,
Sure.
it went, in
Same
the
here.
background.
So how did you approach this?
When I went to Sandia Base, I would go to the base chapel. Sandia was really unique for military institutions. It had a Protestant chapel and a Catholic chapel. On many military installations, they're the same building.
Right.
And they're also set up for Jewish and now Islamic services as well. But they were separated on that base. And one day, after I was there for about a year, Father Robert Fury, whose mother lived on the base and whose father had been a lieutenant colonel, celebrated his first Mass in the base chapel.
And you were there.
I was there, and that was really the turning point. I just thought that was great, and I felt moved by it.
Okay.
So I went home on leave. I was still in the Army. Said to my mom and dad, I want to be a priest. My father was furious. He didn't say it out loud, but he was angry. And subsequently, I know why. I'm the oldest. He didn't have any grandkids, and he didn't have any grandsons. So that was the glitch in there. What he did was really funny. He took me to all the 7 priests that he knew in southern New Hampshire to find out. Now, I only talked to one of them. Father Lancelot Quinn. He looked like the statues of St. Joseph, the white hair on the side and bald, and just a good old jolly Irishman. And I had known him from grade school. And he said to me, I hear you want to be a priest. And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, do you want to be an order priest or a diocesan priest? Frankly, I didn't know the difference. And I said, I'd only heard of 2 orders, Franciscans and Jesuits. I said, I think I'd like to be a Jesuit. And he said, nah, you don't want to be a Jesuit. They threw me out 15 days into the 30-day retreat at the beginning of Jesuit training. I said, okay. And then he said to me, what diocese? And I said, Santa Fe. And he said, why? And I said, well, they have hundreds more Catholics out there and 100 less priests than you have here. He stopped, he looked at me, and he said, let's go watch TV, that's fine.
That's it.
That was it.
Wow. That's pretty prescient for a guy your age, because you're a young guy at this time.
Yeah, I was 19.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Something like.
So you came back. Go ahead.
I had been working in the chapel by that time, and I had access to the Catholic directories. For some reason or other, I looked those numbers up before I went and told my folks that I wanted to be a priest, but I had decided that New Mexico was it. I didn't want to go anywhere else.
That's amazing. All right, then how did you approach it here? Who did you talk to? And
Well, one of the chaplains at the base was Monsignor Barney Burns. He was a priest from the Archdiocese, but he was assigned to Sandia Base in Albuquerque.
Was he in the military?
He was in the military, major. And he took me to see Archbishop Byrne, and we just went from there.
That's great. Where did he send you to seminary?
Well, I went 2 years to the first 2 years college here at the seminary in Santa Fe.
Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary.
Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary.
Was that under Monsignor Hill?
No, the rector, Monsignor Hill, was one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. He was hard,
Me too.
demanding, but boy, he really knew his stuff, and he was helpful if you studied. If you were just messing around, he wouldn't do with you. But the rector was Sigmund Charowitz.
And you were there for 2 years.
I was there for 2 years.
And so you studied at the College of Santa Fe for your classes, or
No, all the classes were there at
okay,
that time.
those days, right.
So, I had Hill and Tournier and Leonard Bear and, they had a full faculty more.
Who were some of your fellow seminarians there that we would know?
George Salazar, for example, from Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Frank Preto, who's the not Prieto. Prieto. He's the retired pastor of St. Joe's from Albuquerque.
Okay.
Those are the two schoolmates that I had there. Tony Mondragon was there. He was a year ahead of me. He's out in Antanchico now. I think he had a stroke.
Okay. So where'd they send you after there?
Well, Archbishop Byrne came out. There were 7 of us graduating that second year. And so he came out, he had us all in a small room, and we were sort of surrounding him, and he was sitting behind the desk, and he said, "Where would you like to go to the seminary?" And I said, I'd already checked this out with my spiritual director, "Tell him you want to go to St. Thomas in Denver for 2 reasons. There are some really great priests from the Archdiocese who are trained at that seminary. And secondly, it's closer than any other seminary to the diocese. So since you're an outsider, you can come here on vacations and various other times to get acclimated to the diocese." That sounded great to me. And so when the Archbishop asked, I just said that. He said, "Fine." And then he asked, was there anybody else? Flavio Santillana said, "Well, I'd like to go to a seminary that's away from New Mexico because I've never been out of state and I want to, see what it's like out there." And Byrne kept asking, "Well, what about the rest of you? What about the rest of you?" And they all sat there mute. And so the Archbishop said, "Well, Lavoie's going to Denver and Santillanes is going to St. Meinrad's in Indiana. And I'll tell the rest of you where you're going when I make up my mind." We left the office. Those 5 were furious. And I said, "Why are you angry? He asked you 4 times.
Ask and you shall receive."
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean.
Yeah. So then you went to Denver and you...
I went to Denver.
Yeah.
The Vincentian priest, some of them were zeros, but I had probably one of the best scripture professors. And I thank God for Bruce Potter all the time. He was the first American doctorate in Scripture. He was a convert from Lutheranism. He was studying Latin to become a priest while he was taking instructions to join the church at the University of Dallas. He wrote, Smith instructs Jackson, a full-volume commentary on the gospel while he was in the seminary.
Wow.
The Vincentian Press refused to publish it, so we got the Paulus Press to shut up.
That's classic church stuff.
Oh, yeah, right.
So what year did you graduate from the seminary and were you ordained?
1964.
Graduated there, and you came and you were ordained where?
I was ordained in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Why was that?
I went and told the rector of the seminary, I said, "My folks don't have enough money to come to New Mexico and to be present in my ordination, so I would like to know what the procedure is so that," he said, "talk to the Archbishop." Well, Archbishop Byrne died in July of 1963. And so Archbishop Davis was inaugurated as the Archbishop of Santa Fe, or installed as the Archbishop in January of 1964. So I was at that ceremony, so I asked him about it, and he said, "Well, who's the Bishop of Manchester?" And I said, "Ernie J. Primo," and he said, "Oh, I know him. Yeah, he'll do a good job."
That's amazing. So, let's get you back here to New Mexico. You've been ordained. You come back. What was your first assignment?
Pius High School in Albuquerque.
You taught high school?
Yes, I taught high school.
Do you want to amplify on your comments there?
Yeah, in the deacon year at the seminary, we got UCAS from Santa Fe that 4 or 5 of us were going to teach in the high school. None of us, even though we had education courses, none of us were really orientated to that. I mean, pastoral ministry was, the orientation. teaching in high school. Now, 2 or 3 of those guys left the seminary immediately. They never came back because of that.
Really?
And I wasn't happy with that. So I got ordained in May. I took a couple of courses at the University of Albuquerque. All these places that don't exist anymore.
In education?
Yeah, no, in English.
Oh, okay. What classes do they have you teaching at Pius?
That was a great experience. They had me teaching all the classes that none of the other faculty members wanted to teach. First of all, probably the most wonderful class was a speech class that was made up of leftover freshmen, sophomores, and seniors that they couldn't fit into any other schedule. So I got them. That was a great class. And then I had a religion class of junior boys. There was a good class, but the juniors had been spoiled by a couple of class monitors. Their freshman and sophomore year, the monitors were busy courting each other instead of taking care of the students. So nobody wanted to teach those kids. And then I had 2 English classes.
All right, we're going to have to move on because I got to get you into the priesthood beyond
I understand
so
that.
then let's just, why don't we go forward and just give us the outline of your priestly career.
I taught at Pius for a year.
Yeah.
And then I told people, I got ordained. I got sent back to high school. That wasn't enough. They sent me back to the seminary. So I became a faculty member at Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary just as Archbishop Davis closed the college section, kept the high school, which struggled on for a couple of years, and then the whole thing closed. And that's another story.
Okay.
But I was there until the late 60s when Davis again made known that he wanted to re-establish the college and send students to the College of Santa Fe, but he wanted some priests to be faculty members. Well, I applied for that. And so Brother Regis told me that, he could use a history professor. Isn't that ironic? When I was in high school, I wanted to be a history professor.
Is that right? That's a small world. So you taught for Brother Regis at the College of
Santa Fe?
I
taught for Brother Regis. He was the dean.
He's been a guest on. He was a guest on our show.
Yeah, and he said to me, "I want you to go, and I want you to teach Asian and Russian history." And that's what I got my master's from the University of New Mexico.
So because of that, you went and got a master's degree.
Yeah.
And studied that. That's phenomenal.
Asian studies and Asian history and Russian studies.
Okay.
I don't know either language, but
all right, we've only got 5 minutes left. There's only a half-an-hour show, so we may have to do another one another time. But before, because now you're retired, give us just an outline after that, and you taught there.
Okay.
Where else did you serve?
I then was assigned to the college, and I stayed at the college until 1977, and then I went on a sabbatical. And then after that sabbatical, I was reassigned to IHM. I was there for about 2.5 years. The Archbishop Sanchez made it known that he needed somebody to be chaplain at the state pen. So I wrote him a letter, because I had already taught there, saying that I was interested in that job. So he assigned me to the state penitentiary. I was there for 11.5 years.
And that was subsequent to the big riot in 1980, correct?
That was 1980, but the riot was in February. I went there in December.
Okay. And then you were there for 10 years?
11.5.
And then where did you go after that?
I had another sabbatical. I needed it. And then I came back and was pastor of San Juan, Okeyewenge, for 4.5 years. And
the oldest parish in the country.
Yeah.
What year? This is where the Spanish showed up for the first time and spent their first year with.
Yeah, 1598.
Old San Juan.
Not where they showed up first.
Yeah.
1500.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was there for 4.5 years, but my health kept deteriorating, and I retired basically for health reasons. I mean, it was diagnosed as a flaming diabetic, and then subsequently, well, I'd had health problems before that. I've had several life-threatening blood clots, deep-seated thrombophlebitis, diabetes, high blood pressure.
You're on oxygen. What else?
Yeah. I got 60% using my lungs. That's a blessing.
Yeah, especially here at 7,000 feet.
Yeah, I know.
Listen, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Give the folks at home who know nothing about the church, priesthood, whatever, what advice would you have for them in their spiritual life, or for former Catholics who are not practicing?
Well, the thing is that I would suggest that what the church do for former Catholics is have exit interviews. Just like you do when you leave a job, to find out why people are leaving, and then see what they can do about helping these people to figure out where they belong. I don't think anybody, totally leaves the church. You say to somebody, I'm a Catholic priest, and they'll say, "Oh, I used to be a Catholic." They wouldn't say that if they didn't consider that an important part of their life. And so maybe they need to revisit it. I think that's something that they need to do. And other people, my mother never became a convert. She never wanted to join the Catholic Church. I mentioned it once, and that was one of the only arguments we ever had about religion. She was quite dedicated and comfortable in the Episcopal Church. And so, I never try to pressure people into joining, but if they ask questions, certainly don't tell them to go. If they ask you as a layperson to explain something, don't say, "Oh, I don't know how to do that. Go ask Father." They're not going to do it.
Right.
And if you don't have enough knowledge...
Well, I've read both these books, the Catechism and the Bible, so I have a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah. But many people don't.
Yeah.
But they know a lot more than they think.
That's true. Well, listen, we've run out of time, so you got to promise to come back. This is obviously a part one. There'll have to be a part two because we've just got it warmed up. Anyhow, I want to thank Father Joe for coming in on short notice, and we've now got the background, so I'll ask him to come back another time. We'll do part two. I hope it's been of some value to you at home. I've certainly enjoyed it. I want to thank our director, Marshall, our people behind the scenes on the cameras, Casey, Ellen, and Stan, and George in the background, and all those in the background keeping Spirituality TV on. So thank you for reviewing. Stay tuned for the credits, and watch us again next week at this time for another program on spirituality.